All right, welcome. Today we are diving deep into Surah Al-Baqarah, specifically verses 176 through 200. With the help of Sayyid Abul Ala Madudi's incredible commentary, we're going to see how these verses lay out a complete blueprint for life, covering everything from your personal faith all the way to social justice. So let's get right into it. So here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start with the absolute foundation. What is true righteousness? Then we'll see how that inner belief builds a just and fair society. After that, we'll zoom in on spiritual discipline with the laws of fasting, and we'll wrap things up by looking at what it means to have integrity in, well, everything. So we begin at the very heart of the matter. The Quran doesn't just start with a command here. Instead, it starts with this profound question that basically redefines what it means to live a righteous life. What is true piety? What is birr? But before it even answers, the Quran does something fascinating. It first corrects a really common but pretty superficial idea of what righteousness is all about. And right away, the verse makes it crystal clear. Righteousness is not about empty rituals. It's not just about which direction you happen to be facing when you pray. No, true righteousness is a complete framework for life, one that starts with sincere belief deep in your heart and then shows itself in real, concrete actions. Now, this is where it gets really powerful. This single verse breaks down birr into these deeply connected pillars. It's not just one thing. It's a holistic package deal. Sincere belief, selfless charity, consistent worship, and an unshakable character. It's an entire blueprint for a righteous person, all in one verse. Okay, so you have this inner righteousness, but what does that actually look like in the real world? How does it affect society? Well, the next set of verses shows us exactly that, by laying down concrete laws that are designed to build a society that's both just and, importantly, merciful. The first principle we run into is qisas, or just retaliation. The core idea is simple, but it's also incredibly profound: a life for a life. This immediately establishes the sacredness of every single human life and sets the foundation for equitable justice for everyone. And you have to understand just how revolutionary this was. As Madudi explains, in the pre-Islamic era, revenge was all about the tribe, and it was often way out of proportion. The life of a noble was seen as worth more than the life of a common person. Islamic law just wiped all that away, saying nope, only the killer is held responsible, and justice doesn't care about your social status. But here's the thing, justice in Islam is never meant to be cold and rigid. There's always a door open for mercy. Notice the specific word used here, brother. Madhuri points out that this isn't an accident. It's a gentle, subtle push towards forgiveness, reminding everyone that even in this terrible situation, there's a bond of humanity, opening the way to accept compensation and spare life. This next bit might sound like a paradox at first, but it's so powerful. The verse tells us that in this law of retribution, there's actually the saving of life. How? Well, by creating a just and serious deterrent, the law of qisas protects the entire society from descending into the chaos of murder and endless, destructive cycles of revenge. Okay, so we've talked about criminal justice. Now the Quran shifts gears to financial justice with the law of bequests, or wasiyah. Initially, this was a clear instruction to create a will. Why? To make sure your wealth was distributed fairly and to stop family fights before they could even start. This was later built upon by the more detailed inheritance laws you find in Surah An-Nisa. All right, so from the laws that shape our society, the focus now zooms in right into the heart and soul of the individual believer. We're talking about spiritual training and discipline. So, why fast? The Quran gives us the answer, straight up. It's not about starving yourself. It's a prescription designed to help you achieve taqwa, this deep, constant, conscious awareness of God that then guides everything you do and think. But what's so amazing, and Madudi really highlights this, is the wisdom in how this was introduced. The obligation to fast wasn't just dropped on people all at once. It came in stages. At first, it was optional. You could fast, or you could feed a person in need instead. This gentle approach made it so much easier for the community to embrace this really transformative act of worship. And you see this theme of mercy woven all throughout these rules. The law is not meant to be a crushing burden. There are clear exceptions for people who are sick or traveling, which just reinforces this beautiful principle that Allah intends for you ease and does not intend for you hardship. And fasting is tied directly to Ramadan as a way to show gratitude for the gift of the Quran itself. And then, right in the middle of all these rules about fasting, you get this incredibly beautiful, intimate verse.
It's like a direct reassurance from God, saying, I am near. It's a reminder, especially when you're in that heightened spiritual state from fasting, that there are no barriers, no intermediaries. When you call, He hears you and He responds. Okay, for our final theme, let's talk about integrity. We're going to see how these principles of honesty and uprightness apply to our money, our social habits, and even to something as difficult and sensitive as conflict. What the Quran does here is really clever. It puts two things side by side: major prohibitions and important permissions. On one hand, it strongly forbids corruption, things like consuming each other's wealth unjustly or using bribery. That protects the whole society. And on the other hand, it clears up some confusion and brings ease to believers, permitting things like intimacy with your spouse and eating and drinking during the nights of Ramadan. So people would look up at the moon, at its different phases, and they'd ask the Prophet, what's that all about? The Quran's answer is just so practical and demystifying. It cuts through all the superstition and says, look, the phases of the moon are simply a natural calendar for all of humanity. It's a way to mark time and figure out the dates for things like the Hajj. Simple as that.
This is another great example of Islam clearing away superstition. See, there was this odd custom some Arabs had where if they were on pilgrimage, they thought it was more pious to enter their homes from the back instead of the front door. The Quran just dismisses it as meaningless, driving home that core theme again. True piety, true beer, isn't about baseless rituals. It's about taqwa, having that God consciousness and living a straightforward, upright life. Now, you have to remember the context here. For years in Mecca, the Muslims faced brutal persecution and couldn't fight back. This verse, revealed later in Medina, was the very first permission for defensive fighting. And the command is so specific: fight those who fight you. It's not a call for aggression. It's permission to defend the community against an active enemy. But, and this is so crucial, right along with the permission comes a very strict line you cannot cross. Do not transgress. Maududi explains that this is a huge ethical boundary. It forbids harming non-combatants, women, children, the elderly. It forbids wanton destruction. And it forbids fighting for any worldly gain like land or power. The struggle must be purely for the cause of God. So, when you put it all together, what do you get? You get this complete framework for a healthy society. It's a society built on these powerful pillars: justice, which is always balanced with mercy, and all of it guided by an unwavering integrity in everything you do, both personally and publicly. So let's end with this final thought to chew on. These verses are not just a random list of rules. They are all interconnected threads, weaving together this complete fabric for a just and God-conscious life. They guide us in everything, from the private state of our own hearts to the public state of the world. It's a blueprint that really invites us to stop and reflect on its incredible depth and its comprehensive wisdom.